Welcome back to Rich Words Music, where today we're looking at this. It's the vintage reissued V100WR. And I know that a few of you will be looking at this and saying straight away, yeah, it's another single cutaway, mahogany body guitar with two humbuckers, how groundbreaking. But stop right there, because this guitar is slightly different. If you look a little bit closer, you'll see that we've got a pair of Wilkinson mini humbucking pickups. And believe it or not, these will give us a significantly different tonal performance from this instrument. So stick around for those sound samples if you don't believe me. But what we're going to do in this video then is I will tell you all about the specifications and the features of the instrument, then we'll get to the playing part and I'll play the guitar in a variety of styles, as I always do on my channel, and afterwards I'll give you some more opinions on how the guitar performs, how it plays, how it feels, and whether or not I think that these mini humbuckers are going to be worth your time, because I'm willing to bet that probably a high percentage of you watching this have never really spent that much time with a guitar with mini humbuckers. I know that I haven't. I've had one here before at the office to do a review demo video. That was actually the Tone Fuchs Dyna, and I'll link that video there. But I had that guitar last year for a month or two, and that's actually a €4,000 custom luthier built instrument made here in Germany to the very highest quality standards every step of the way. So a little bit different to vintage guitars. Now, at time of filming, November 2021, the vintage V100 instruments cost around 400 to 450 euros or dollars or similar, whatever your local currency is. Now, just before we get into the rest of the video, the meat of it, let me tell you that I didn't buy this guitar myself. It's been sent to me by Music Vine, who is the distribution partner for vintage guitars here in Germany. So thank you to Frank and the team for sending this guitar over for me to make a video or two with. I'm not getting paid to make the video, I'm not getting told what to say, I don't think I get to keep the guitar afterwards either, but Music Vine don't know what I'm going to say in this video until the rest of you see it published just like this, and now we're on a level playing field. Let's get on with the rest of it. So what exactly have we got here then with the V100WR? Well, V100 is Vintage's code, its model name for its single cutaway Les Paul style of instruments, and with these pickups, of course, what we're looking at is an homage to the Gibson Les Paul Deluxe. That was a Les Paul model that was produced between the late 60s and the mid 80s, which was effectively a Les Paul with mini humbuckers in, and it had mixed reactions at the time, but it's become something of a closet classic, I think, and lots of people really love the tones of mini humbuckers and some of the beautiful sparkle finishes that you can find on some of the Gibson models. We don't have that on the V100WR, we have Wine Red, which is the WR of the name. So this finish is a beautiful deep burgundy. It reminds me, in fact, of a rather tasty glass of medium to dry red wine, and you can see the mahogany grain coming through there if I get it out of the light. It's a really classy looking instrument. So the body is solid mahogany. We don't have a flame maple cap, so you can see the mahogany grain on the top, the sides, and the back of the guitar too. We've got really nice looking cream and gold hardware that complements the wine red color really well, in my opinion. We've got the two gold Wilkinson mini humbuckers there, a three-way selector switch to move between the pickups, a volume and a tone control for each of the pickups, nice cream scratch plate there too, and the bridge is a Wilkinson tune-o-matic type. So we've got cream binding on the body, cream binding on the neck too, and let me tell you about the rest of the neck then. So if you're familiar with Gibson Les Paul type guitars, you'll be very familiar with this one. So we've got a 12-inch fingerboard radius there, so it's quite flat. We've got a 628mm scale length, that's 24 3/4 inches, 22 medium jumbo frets. We've got a 43mm Graphtec tusk nut there, and the neck itself, in terms of size and profile, I would say is a medium to slim C shape. It's got a poly finish as well, so if you prefer satin finish necks, you'll probably have to look elsewhere. But as I said, if you're familiar with Gibson Les Paul style necks, you'll really feel at home as soon as you pick up this guitar. Let's move to the headstock then. Here we've got the black vintage headstock with the gold logo and the little design there, whatever that's called. If I flip it over to the back, you'll see that we've actually got Grover Deluxe tuners in the tulip style on this guitar. And I actually believe that's a bit of an upgrade for vintage, because vintage guitars that I've played in the past have usually had Wilkinson hardware on them. Now, there's nothing wrong with Wilkinson hardware at all. Trev Wilkinson is fantastic and he makes great stuff. But in terms of the budget that we're looking at, to have a name like Grover and to have Grover Deluxes on this guitar does feel like it's a bit of an upgrade. So that's the vintage V100WR then. What we're going to do now is play it and hear these mini humbuckers in action. So my rig for today is going to be my Hughes & Kettner Black Spirit 200 amp head, and we'll start on the amps clean channel. I'll do some bluesy stuff, some poppy stuff, some indie stuff. Then we'll kick on my favorite Greer Light Speed organic overdrive pedal for some light crunch. We'll do some indie rock and some classic rock. After that, we'll move to the amps lead channel, where we'll do some harder rock, some punk and some alternative rock. And at the end, I'll go back to the amps lead channel and engage my Rev G3 distortion pedal. We'll tune the guitar down to drop D and see if it can do a bit of metal chugginess. We'll see how the mini humbuckers handle that kind of music. Enough talk then. This is the vintage reissued V100WR in wine red. Let's play it now and speak in more detail about it afterwards. Okay then, so that was the vintage reissued V100WR, and I hope you enjoyed the playing and some of those mini humbucker tones. Now, you'll have heard, if you didn't know it already, that mini humbuckers are their own thing. They're totally different. They're not the same as a full-sized, full-fat humbucker. They're not the same as a single coil either. They're different to P90s. They're different to Filtertrons. They're different to any other kind of pickup. They really occupy their own space in the guitar tonal world. And for that reason, I'm kind of surprised that more guitar players don't actually have a guitar with mini humbuckers in their arsenal. And that actually includes me, and that's something I'm going to have to rectify in future for sure, because I love the tones that I got from this guitar. But I'm going to speak more in detail about the sounds in a bit. Let me tell you more about what I thought of the instrument itself. So when I first got it out of the box, I was very, very taken in by that beautiful wine red finish. It's a really deep, rich shade of burgundy, like a glass of red wine, like I said. And I don't mind the odd glass of red wine, so that's a very, very nice thing too. And I think that the gold and the cream hardware really set off nicely against that wine red. This is a very classy, expensive looking instrument. And so when I picked it up as well, I was also happily pleased with the weight. Les Paul type guitars with mahogany bodies and necks like this one are often very weighty beasts, and this one feels very comfortable indeed to me. It's 3.6 kilograms, or if you measure it the other way, that's just a tad under 8 pounds. So not too light, not too heavy, definitely not a Les Paul custom backbreaker, that's for sure. It feels really good to play sitting down. It feels great to play on a strap standing up, so very happy with the weight too. And as I've mentioned before we did the playing part, I was also happy to note that Vintage seemed to, with this batch of guitars, have upgraded some of the hardware slightly. So I've never seen Grover Deluxe tuners on a Vintage before. I've never come across a Vintage with a Graphtec Tusk nut either. So that might be an upgrade which is just new to me, but I believe it's one that's newer to them as of 2021. So that was very cool indeed. So now we've got my first impressions out the way. Let me tell you about the build quality and the hardware on the guitar. When it comes to the build quality and the hardware of this guitar, I was very impressed right from the off. Now, I'm very familiar with Vintage guitars. Just in case any of you didn't know, I worked for JHS, the company behind Vintage, between 2010 and 2013, and I played pretty much every guitar in the catalogue back then. So I'm very, very well acquainted with this brand of instruments, and I'm really happy to note that this seems to be of a higher quality than the vast majority I played back in my day. Now, Vintage were always known as affordable entry-level instruments, but also a slightly higher quality than that. And I feel like this new batch of 2021 V100WRs is a step beyond what I've played in the past. Like I've just said with the hardware, with the Grover Deluxes there, with the Graphtec Tusk nut, you can expect a guitar that's going to perform and stay in tune for a lot longer than just, you know, a generic plastic nut. And Wilkinson tuners, while really, really good, are one step down the ladder from Grover Deluxes, in my opinion anyway. Now, the rest of the hardware on the guitar was all very, very good indeed. I'm a big fan of Wilkinson pickups. The mini humbuckers didn't disappoint in any way. I'll speak more about them in a little bit. But the rest of the hardware, totally fine. No problems or issues with the wiring or the pots crackling or anything like that whatsoever. The neck itself has been done really, really well. The frets are all smoothed, well crowned. The intonation was good. The action is nice and low. No complaints whatsoever, and that made playing the guitar a breeze too, and it was enjoyable right from the off. So no problems at all with the build quality and the playability. I'm very happy with this individual example. I do want to say a few words about the neck on this guitar, because of course the neck of a guitar is integral to a guitar's playability, and if the neck is no good, you're not going to have any fun playing the instrument whatsoever. And now there is a little secret, something I've been saving up until now, and that is that this guitar has a rosewood fretboard, which I'm really, really happy about, because so many more affordable guitar makers have stopped using rosewood since 2017, since the CITES regulations. We've seen woods like Indian laurel and Pau Ferro being used by more and more builders. And in the case of Vintage, Trev Wilkinson found them a wood called Lignum Rosa, which is like a composite of different wood types, which looks and feels and plays like rosewood, but isn't rosewood. And I actually did a video on the Vintage V120, which is a single P90 equipped single cutaway guitar, which you can find at the link there. And that had a Lignum Rosa board, which I was totally happy with, but I always personally prefer rosewood, and I'm very happy to note that this guitar has rosewood. And perhaps that's another upgrade that's been given to this 2021 batch, but whatever, that really helps the neck for me. I love a rosewood board, I love the feel of it, I just love the sustain that this guitar has, and I don't know if the rosewood helps with that, but I'm sure the mahogany neck helps with that too. Now, in terms of the playability of the neck, this was great straight from the off. Like I've said, the frets are great, the intonation's great, the action's totally fine. It's a nice medium to slimmer C-shaped neck, which I just find really easy to get up and down. The only thing that would make it easier and quicker to get up and down it would be if it was a satin neck, but this being a more vintage traditional theme guitar, it has that poly finish, and it's no problem for me at all. I would pick a satin neck if there was a version with satin and a version with a poly finish neck, but for me, the neck on this guitar inspired me to keep on playing, so I'm very happy to report that that was one of the best facets of this instrument. And now we come to the single game-changing aspect of this instrument, which is those Wilkinson mini humbucking pickups. Now, if you're a guitar player and you're watching this video, and I'm pretty sure if you're watching this video, you're a guitar player, you'll have played guitars with single coil pickups and guitars with humbuckers, and they all tend to have their distinct advantages and disadvantages too. And what I feel about these mini humbuckers is that they pretty much have all of the advantages of most of the pickup types and almost none of the disadvantages. So we'll start with the single coil pickups then. Now, if you play Tellys or Strats, you'll have played single coil pickups, and they have a beautiful sparkle to them. They're really clear, they do great pristine cleans, and they give you a lot more noise as you wind up the gain, and that's a bit of a disadvantage. Of course, these being mini humbuckers, they don't get noisier as you wind up the gain, at least not significantly anyway. But what these mini humbuckers do is get you a lot closer to single coil clarity than a standard full-size humbucker would. So these mini humbuckers, they won't get you a full-on telly twang, but they get you quite close. They do have a really nice sparkle to them. They sound really, really nice for clean. To me, they sound like the world's fattest single coil, effectively, while giving you the advantage of being humbucking. Now, when we think about full-fat humbuckers as well, those are something that have much more of a thicker mid-range push. They work really well on high-gain tones too. And I think that these mini humbuckers, they pretty much do everything a full-size humbucker will. They don't sound as huge and fat as a full-size humbucker would, and they're perhaps not quite so at home for playing really down-tuned metal stuff, as you'll have heard from the playing examples, but they really do a great job there. And they have an extra layer of clarity compared to a standard fatter humbucker. So for everything from the clean tones through to the metal, I was really happy with the tones from this guitar. On the clean stuff, I did samples on all three pickup settings, and you can really hear that this guitar sounds very much at home doing that. It does have a bit of a single coil clarity to it, but at the same time, it has a humbucker kind of thickness and mellowness to it as well. It would be great for stuff like jazz that I don't play. It would be great for stuff like blues that I also don't play much of either. But it was really, really great for the poppy stuff and the indie stuff that I did. And when we installed the Greer Lightspeed Overdrive, I really thought that this guitar came into its own. For the indie stuff, I thought it sounded fantastic. It was really clear, really biting, but not overly glassy or brittle in any way. And for the classic rock too, it was really in your face. I can imagine it really cutting through a mix a bit more than some humbucking guitars would. Now, when we went up to the lead channel on the amp and when we went to the Rev G3, I thought we started to lose a little bit of the overall fatness of the tones from this guitar. You'd get thicker, fatter, more assertive tones from a full-size humbucker, that's for sure. But if you wanted to play these kinds of music with a mini humbucker, you absolutely can do that. I thought on the down-tuned drop D stuff, the metal, the chugginess, we were actually tighter in terms of the overall tonality than a full-size humbucker. We just didn't have the aggression levels. And these pickups are also quite vintage voiced, and that would account for some of that too. But overall, in terms of tones, I really think that these pickups are something that probably every guitar player should have in their collection. I'm not specifically saying the Wilkinson mini humbuckers, but a guitar with mini humbuckers. If you're really kind of looking for something else in terms of your tones, get down to a guitar store and try a guitar with mini humbucking pickups. But I guess that's actually one of the difficulties in your search, because there aren't that many guitars that have mini humbucking pickups. I did a little bit of research about other instruments that have them, and there's not actually that many. Now, the most obvious is the one which I've mentioned before. That would be the Gibson Les Paul Deluxe. But if you were to go for a full-fat Gibson, you'd be paying about €2,500 or dollars for that guitar. So we're not in the same ballpark at all in terms of price point there. Now, of course, there are a few other guitars that have mini humbuckers in them, but they tend to be slightly more niche or unusual instruments. The two most obvious ones that I can think of off the top of my head would be Firebirds, and they're slightly different anyway, and the really, really cool guitar that I want, which is the Ernie Ball Sterling Music Man St. Vincent signature model. That has 3 mini humbuckers in it, and I really, really want to try that guitar. I haven't yet. I've held one in my hands, but I never got to play one with the right pickup configuration. But that's a guitar which is very, very unique in terms of people who want to have that kind of instrument. I did do a little bit of research to try and find if there are any other kind of more affordable guitars with mini humbuckers out there right now, and as I said, they are pretty niche. So there's a couple of Epiphone models. There's the Epiphone Crestwood Custom, which is a double cutaway, which is similar to the Wilshire. If you're familiar with that one, search that one out if you're interested in retro kinds of tones. There's an Epiphone Riviera that has them, and there is another model called the Uptown Cat, which is a semi-hollow, sort of more jazzier type of guitar. Again, very, very niche, I would say. There's a couple of Gretsch Electromatics that have mini humbuckers too. There's an Ibanez George Benson model and one of the Ibanez Artcore semi-hollow models that have mini humbuckers. There's a couple of D'Angelicos, but apart from that, there's not that much. So yeah, if you're looking for a guitar with mini humbuckers, and if you're looking for something a little bit more unassuming, a little bit less out there, the V100WR pretty much stands on its own. The other guitars that I've listed, they're very, very out there. They'll get you noticed on stage, that's for sure, but most of them are kind of more associated with a single personality, a person who plays them, a signature artist in some cases. They're very, very unique, and probably a little bit less flexible and versatile than the V100WR would be. Now, of course, there are many, many other single-cut, mahogany-bodied Les Paul styles of instruments that feature full-sized humbuckers and P90s too. There's plenty from Vintage, there's plenty for Epiphone, and there's other brands that do them too. But as I said, if you want mini humbuckers, the V100WR is pretty much in a class of its own in that sense. And so I guess that's a pretty good conclusion for this instrument, really. At this price point, the Vintage V100WR is in a class of its own. Of course, there's loads of other single cutaway mahogany body guitars with humbuckers. You can find them all over the place, at every music store, at pretty much every price point. But if you want to differentiate, if you want a very different LP sort of experience with these mini humbuckers, then this guitar is basically right now the only one out there. And in my opinion, it sounds, plays and feels fantastic, especially if I consider the price for it as well. There are cheaper guitars out there, but I don't think that they match up in this context. This guitar felt and played great straight out of the box, and those mini humbuckers give it an edge over so many other instruments. I know that with single coils and with humbuckers you can get a wide variety of tones and you can do pretty much everything, but you can with these too, and what these offer is a slightly different tonal palette compared to those instruments. So whether you've already got a bunch of different guitars and you wanted to add a different tone into your arsenal, or whether you're just looking for your first single cutaway type instrument and want something with a bit more clarity than a standard slightly muddy humbucker sound, then you should probably consider this instrument. Now, I've heard it said that mini humbuckers aren't really for everyone, so try this one in person if you can, and I would really recommend that if you're going to be looking for this instrument, that you try and get one of the really new ones, the 2021 editions, because they do seem to have upgraded hardware like the Groovy Deluxe tuners and the Graphtec Tusk nut. Not a problem if you go for the other ones, but I really think that these ones probably will see you better in the long run, and they'll probably play better out the box and require less in terms of mods or upgrades and setups in the years to come. I'm very, very impressed with this guitar then. I think it looks great too. And as I said at the start of the video, I'm now going to have to go on a mini humbucker quest to see what other guitars are out there that offer this kind of pickup and are slightly more normal than some of the others that I've said. I would thoroughly recommend the Vintage V100WR to anybody who's looking for this kind of instrument then. No questions asked. It's been really, really fun to have, and I'm not really looking forward to having to send it back either. But them's the breaks sometimes. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have any more questions about the Vintage V100WR or anything else guitar-wise, shoot me a question down there in the comments and I shall answer to the best of my ability. Stick around and subscribe to my channel if you would, if you're still here and haven't subscribed yet. I do loads more videos with guitars that are well priced. I do videos with pedals and amps, and I talk to a lot of cool people in the musical instrument industry too. But that's been it for today's video. I've been Rich for Rich Words Music, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.